Okay, we are live. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the Quality of Life and Public Safety Committee meeting tonight. Today is January 19th, 2021. This meeting is being broadcast on the Hartford Public Access Television, also HPA-TV.org, and also on Channel 96 for Comcast and Frontier. I'd like to introduce everyone that's here. That would be Chief Doty, Chief Freeman, Assistant Chief Medina, Assistant Chief Howell, our attorney from Corporation Counsel, Attorney Natalie Fiola Guerrieri. Did I say it right? Councilwoman Marilyn Rossetti, our Majority Leader, Councilman Clark, and also a candidate that will be on the PAR of the Police Accountability Review Board, Clarissa Lee, Attorney Clarissa Lee. Thank you for being with us. So the first item on our agenda is a resolution from Mayor Broman authorizing the mayor to apply for and accept a grant in the amount of $299,949.81 from the State of Connecticut Department of Transportation Highway Safety Office for the enforcement of impaired driving offenses. This is item number 3 on the agenda of December 14, 2020. So, Chief Doty, would you like to speak on this?
Sure. This is a grant that we get every year from the Department of Transportation. We've been fortunate to receive this grant every year in conjunction with our Click It or Ticket, distracted driving. This particular one is a DUI grant. This grant for just short of $300,000 covers 100% of our overtime that we dedicate to enforcing DUI. These are both checkpoints that you see come out from the department from time to time. Those checkpoints are predetermined with the DOT, and also our roving patrols that enforce DUI. So this allows us to do the majority of our DUI enforcement on grants and instead of on city funds. The officers here in Hartford every year are in the tops in the state for numbers of DUI arrests. I went to an awards ceremony last year. 2 of our officers were recognized, as well as our department was recognized as the leading large department in the state of Connecticut for DUI enforcement. This grant makes that possible. There is no matching, covers 100% of the overtime costs and the full fringe.
Okay, thank you for that, Chief. I do have a couple of questions now. In accepting this grant, and obviously it's a common grant that we've received in the past, in what area of the city will you be performing these duties?
As I said, these are all predetermined locations with the DOT. They spread it out throughout the entire city.
So is the Department of Transportation that assigns the area, or and what data do they use?
No, it's our traffic division, and they use car accident data. They use, we also use complaints from citizens that we take in quite a few complaints about traffic enforcement, car accident. They use a whole plethora of information to set up these DUI grants in different areas of the city. Once the schedule is set, it has to be approved, and then it is announced. As you know, we have to announce any DUI checkpoint ahead of time per statute. And then the rovers are citywide, so they're deployed by the traffic division commander on an as-needed basis throughout the entire city.
Okay, I'm going to open the floor up to the council members who have any questions.
Through you,
Councilman
Mr.
Clark.
Thank you, Chief Doty. Thank you for the explanation of the grant. With the rovers, is there any way technology-wise that this might be connected to our C4? Just thinking outside of the box regarding traffic control and speeding.
So the rovers have been connected to a lot of things. The rovers have been used when we have, remember way back when we had concerts, and we used rovers in and around the Meadows and the Civic Center. We've used rovers that have been directed by C4 personnel that are watching the cameras. We've used rovers in post-accidents. So after an accident happens, if an officer believes a DUI was involved, the rover could be dispatched out to take the DUI from the patrol officer, so the patrol officer could then respond to calls for service. So the rovers are used in a lot of different ways, but yes, some of it can be technology driven as well.
I'm not sure if I heard you correctly in the explanation. Does this grant allow us to purchase more rovers?
It funds. So what a rover is just a non-stationary officer, an officer on patrol versus a checkpoint. So yes, this grant breaks up the money into designated checkpoints, and there's a certain number of them. I don't have that number right now. And then the rest of the money goes towards roving patrols, which tend to give us more flexibility when there's events and during the higher times of DUI surrounding holidays and holiday weekends. Things.
And per state statute, what's the notice requirement for to the public?
I think it's 24 hours. We put them out for 24 hours in advance. In fact, one went out today.
Yes, I saw that. When the locations are set, is that like something that's permanent or based upon vehicle accidents and things of that nature? Could that be adjusted?
It's not permanent year to year, but it is my understanding that they make the schedule, and that schedule will go through September, from now through September. So that schedule will be preset.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Rossetti?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, can we entertain a motion?
I make a motion that we send this item with a favorable recommendation to the full council.
Second. I believe it's just you.
I'm not on the committee, Jimmy.
Just
right, so it's you and I, right, Majority Leader?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's passed. Thank you. Our second item on the agenda is a resolution confirming the appointment of Clarissa Lee, an attorney to the Police Accountability Review Board, which is known also as PARB. This is item number 2 on the agenda of January 11, 2021, first meeting of this year. So I'd like to introduce, where is she? Miss Lee. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
So, Ms. Lee, if you can, for our viewers, can you just give your name, where you live, and also who you are?
Absolutely. My
Thank
name
you.
is Clarissa Lee. I am at 38 Guilford Street in Hartford, and I'm an attorney in Hartford. My office is in Hartford as well, and we practice primarily personal injury and family law.
And unfortunately, I don't have your resume in front of me. Can you give us more detail on your experience and also why are you interested to be on the PARB?
Absolutely. So I'm a 5th generation Hartfordian. My family has a lot of community ties to Hartford. My aunt is, a part of Urban League. My uncle, Carl Hardrick, has done a lot of community work with the YMCA and with the youth in the community. And it's just piqued an interest in me to want to give back and help my local community. I was raised in Hartford, and my grandmother as well, who passed away, was a teacher in Hartford as well for many, many years. So they really brought to me this intrinsic interest, I guess, to want to give back, especially to my local community, in whatever way I can. And I just so happen to have gone to law school, so hopefully I can lend a better perspective on certain laws and rules and regulations that may need to be analyzed, that may need to be altered, and do it in a fair and just way, so that I'm also giving the perspective of a citizen, somebody who not only has been raised in Hartford, but who still has children that are in Hartford, who still has family that is in Hartford. And I've seen how certain rules and regulations have been applied to my clients as well. So I understand, some of the things that may need to change that could be done better, that have worked well. And I think being able to lend that type of a valuable to this committee. As far as my experience, I have been a law clerk in Tolland for 3 years when I first graduated from law school and passed the bar. I was working for the civil, family, and habeas judges that were in Tolland County. I also worked at a private law office in Hartford doing criminal and civil work there prior to opening up my own law firm in Hartford, where now we do primarily, as I said previously, civil and family work. I was working with the Family Justice Center in Bridgeport for a bit in the beginning of starting my law practice, where we were helping victims of sexual and domestic abuse. And their organization was sending their clients to us at a low bono or pro bono rate, where essentially I would work with them and try to help them with different types of disputes, criminal, family, civil. So I have a plethora of experience with regards to different areas of the law, and a lot of courtroom experience, as well as experience working with a wide variety of different types of people.
Thank you for that. And I do have a couple of questions for you. Did you have the opportunity to meet with the leadership at the Hartford Police Department yet?
I have not.
No? Okay, so hopefully you will soon. We have on the screen our Chief of Police, Jason Thody. We have who is to my far left. And also we have at the center screen, on my screen at least, we have Assistant Chief Rafael Medina. And also okay, there you go. You just switched up on me. We have Assistant Chief Kenny Howell, who just joined us approximately a couple of months ago. So hopefully you guys can connect and get to know each other, because I believe that communication is the most important. Right now, we'll open up the floors to the council members. Councilwoman Rossetti.
Yep, thank you, Councilman Sanchez. Through you. Attorney Lee, really, it's more of a statement. I just want to thank you for doing something that's so well needed. You're so qualified. You're so refreshing to hear your perspective, and I'm really excited to have you as a part of the PARB.
Thank you.
Majority Leader Clark.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. To echo the sentiments of Councilwoman Rossetti, I don't have any questions. I'm just happy, as we know, for the cover letter, I recommended Attorney Lee to the mayor, and he graciously accepted my recommendation to place her before the council. So I am thankful for her willingness to serve, wanting to serve. So we've had multiple great conversations regarding her willingness to serve, why she wants to serve, and to give back to the city that she knows she loves, that she has born and raised in, has her practice here. As you heard, her talk about her experience. A lot of that happened outside of Hartford, but she saw fit to come back to the city to want to serve and open up her practice. And she's a woman of color as well. And so I'm glad that she, again, said yes to the call to serve our city. And I think that she will be phenomenal as a integral part of the newly created Police Accountability Review Board, and can give some refreshing legal advice and counsel to the rest of the board members as they discuss policy. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Clark. I also want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues. I feel, very, very refreshed with what you had to say, especially coming from, a citizen that's from Hartford and came back to Hartford to work with the council and the city. Looking forward to working with you. I think I speak for most of the council. Our doors are open. There's anytime you need to reach to us, don't hesitate to call us.
Thank you.
And thank you for your time and your service that you're about to give us. Motion?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we move favorably, make a favorable recommendation to the full council for Clarissa Lee as an appointee for the Police Accountability Review Board.
And I second that, and that passed. Thank you so much, Clarissa Lee. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So our next agenda, and Clarissa, by the way, you don't have to hang around if you have anything else to do. So item number 3, presentation from Chief Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman, and I just want to acknowledge, Mr. Councilman, we have Councilman Gill and Councilman LeBrun that joined us just in the event you weren't aware of that.
Yes, thank you for that. Also, I just want to let the audience know that we're also streaming on Facebook. Thank you, Chief.
No problem, sir. With your permission, I'd like to share my screen for my presentation.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, can you see everything okay?
I can. Yeah. Hopefully everyone else can.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good evening, madams and sirs of the council, my colleagues in public safety, as well as court counsel, and of course, our esteemed citizens. It's my honor and pleasure to present the Hartford Fire Department's presentation for the Quality of Life Public Safety Committee meeting on this evening, January 19th. First, I'd like to start off with talking a little bit about COVID-19. For the fire department, since we started tracking the data, we have responded to 2,238 COVID-19 calls, 483 of those roughly 2,200 actually being patients who were COVID-19 positive. So your fire department continues to do an outstanding job responding to these calls and rendering this critical service to citizens throughout the city. Obviously, you need personal protective equipment to do your job adequately, and we have at this time no personal protective equipment needs, not just in the fire department, but with any other department within the city. As you're well aware, the fire department procures and disseminates all of the requisite COVID-19 PPE for all city agencies. In regards to quarantine, right now we currently have 9 members of the fire department that are out on quarantine. This is because one of their family members has tested positive and they are awaiting test results themselves, or the member has tested positive because a member of their family has tested positive within their household. So currently right now, fire department has 9 members that are out. Fire stat, we are in the process of completing our 2020 fire stat. As soon as that is complete by our strategic planning manager, Leo Siri, that will be shared with the council, all department heads, as well as all of our citizens here in the city via the City of Hartford's website. Also, in conjunction with our 2020 fire stat, we are working on our 2020 annual report. So I'm hoping by close of business this Friday, you will have the annual fire stat as well as the annual report that you're accustomed to seeing this time every single year. In regards to our new apparatus, I'm proud to say that we have taken possession of our new heavy rescue. As I mentioned to you before, our heavy rescue unit is the busiest heavy rescue in the United States by responding to over 5,500 calls of service a year. And we took possession of our brand new heavy rescue last week. It's a wonderful piece of equipment. So if you're ever in the area of Sisson Avenue, or if you see the heavy rescue out and about in the city, please take a moment to look at it. It's the best that money can buy, and obviously the best firefighters deserve the best equipment. So definitely thank you to Mayor Bronin, Ms. Montanez, as well as you on the council for supporting your fire department and ensuring that we have what we need to do our jobs. Pictured here is Engine 2 and Engine 5. This is the same picture that I shared with you last month, but we will take possession of our brand new engines. I received note earlier today on Thursday. So this Thursday, we will take possession of them. They will be at our shop getting retrofitted with a few minor things, and they will probably be in service 1 to 2 weeks after we take possession of it next Thursday. So those new engines will go to Engine 2 on North Main Street and then Engine 5 on Sigourney. Any questions about anything I've shared so far? All right,
Yes,
hearing none.
Chief. I do have a question. So as far as the mechanics, are these new apparatuses, are they required to take a new class as far as the new equipment?
So our mechanics, the majority of them are EVT certified, which is Emergency Vehicle Technician certified. So it doesn't matter the manufacturer. A lot of the main components that are included in the NFPA standard, NFPA 1901, that our mechanics should be familiar with, they are. There are specifics about each different type of apparatus that exists that is manufacturer specific that any mechanic would have to become familiar with. And that's part of that 1 to 2 week transition once we take possession of an apparatus. That also allows the mechanic to get familiar with those specifics.
Thank you.
No problem.
I have a question
Moving
about
on to,
sorry,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
just right quick. I have a question about the new apparatus. Are there any new technology devices or anything like that on this apparatus that we didn't have previously?
For the heavy rescue, absolutely. The heavy rescue, for those who aren't familiar with the heavy rescue, that is our special operations unit. Every member assigned to the tactical unit 1 or our heavy rescue, they receive specific special training. That training ranges from rope rescue, confined space rescue, trench rescue. A lot of folks are familiar with the term jaws of life. That is tools that we use for extrication for motor vehicle accidents. So they have the top of the line extrication equipment, top of the line rescue equipment. For the engines, we try to keep it as simple as possible. The more electronics you have, the more opportunity there is for failure, which drives up costs for repairs. So it is, these two engines are truly workhorses. You know, we are the busiest fire department in the state of Connecticut. Our apparatus, doesn't matter if it's an engine, a ladder truck, or a heavy rescue, they see some work. And so we try to keep the apparatus as simple as possible to keep maintenance costs down, but also they are built and designed for work.
Okay. I also want to let my colleagues know that I do not see you on the screen. The presentation is taken over the screen. So if you have any questions, just speak right up. Thank you. All right, Chief, you good?
All right, thank you, sir. The slide that you're looking at now is our slide for the month of December from our fire stat. As you can see, the men and women of the department did an exceptional job with responding to fire incidents by maintaining a response time of 6 minutes and 20 seconds, at least 90% of the time. They did that 9 out of the 12 months. That is in a very, very challenging year due to COVID-19. So hats off to the men and women for continuing to provide exceptional service to our citizens. Next slide is the slide for EMS. So our performance target is arriving on scene 5 minutes or less per NFPA 1710, which is the standard for career fire department deployment, in regards to getting on scene with an AED 5 minutes or less 90% of the time. So for the month of December, that was our poorest performing month out of the month. However, that was also our most challenging. We had a number of firefighters that were off due to COVID-19 or out of work due to COVID-19. Just a tremendously challenging month for HFD in the month of December. However, that 71.41% is still largely higher than the majority of career fire departments of our size in the nation. The goal is 90% per our standards of response coverage through the Commission on Fire Accreditation International. We could lower our standard to 70% or 80% or 85%, so the statistics look better. We chose not to do that in Hartford Fire Department. If NFPA says the standard is 90% of the time, even though it's very challenging for any career fire department to meet that goal, that is our goal. That's what we are going to continue to strive to meet. However, for the month of December, it was our worst performing month. However, the performance itself does not cause any concern for me as the chief of the department, taking into consideration the number of personnel that we had off and looking at how we compare to other departments nationwide with a department our size. Any questions on this slide? All right, moving on to EMS. For the month of December, your fire department responded to 1,697 calls for service. Here you can see the breakdown per neighborhood. We had the highest number of calls in Asylum Hill neighborhood with a total of 175, followed by Frog Hollow at 159, and then Northeast at 157, and then finally Berry Square with 154. Now for the entire year, your Class 1 and internationally accredited fire department responded to a total of 20,169 EMS calls for service. And again, those same neighborhoods that I just named continue to be the highest in regards to total responses for the entire year. Asylum Hill, number 1 on that list, followed by Northeast with 1,924. Frog Hollow with 1,983, Northeast 1,924, and then Berry Square 1,861. Again, roughly 20,000 calls for service for EMS for the entire year of 2020.
And Chief, is that also because of COVID?
No, sir. That's on par with what we've responded to for the last 5 years.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Next slide is Narcan administered for the month of December. The fire department administered 17 citizens with Narcan. That number does not include AMR or Aetna ASM, nor the police department. That only includes the number of times your fire department administered Narcan to citizens. Earlier today, we had our second meeting in 2 months, we being myself, Mark Jenkins, Aetna ASM, Mark Hannigan, and then AMR's Brandon Gum to discuss opioid overdoses in general and how we are going to respond as first responders. That conversation has now transitioned to coordinating with Director Leonie Arroyo's office and coming up with strategic initiatives to be more proactive to prevent overdoses and provide our citizens with informational cards that are from Mark Jenkins' office and organization on how they can get help, how they can get assistance and treatment. So that next meeting is going to be February 2nd at 11 a.m. And Director Arroyo will join that conversation. Our first 2 meetings thus far have been exceptional, and we feel as if we are moving in the right direction to try to provide as much assistance to our citizens that are in need as possible as it pertains to opioid overdoses.
Chief, is it possible that you can send an invite to the council for those who are able to join you in that meeting?
Yes, sir, no problem. Next slide is all fires for the month of December. We have a total of 44, as you can see. And you can see the fires range from vehicle fires. There were 11, structure fires, 10, trash or rubbish fires, 5, cooking fires, 3, etc. The most impacted neighborhood for the month of December was Asylum Hill with a total of 8 different types of fires in the Asylum Hill neighborhood. And this next slide is all fires for 2020. There were a total of 739 different types of fires in the city for 2020. And again, ranges everything from structure fires to rubbish fires. And the most impacted neighborhood for 2020 as it pertains to all types of fires was Northeast with a total of 95. Now, with this data, what we do as a fire department, we break it down even further to find out what types of fires occurred, what those 95 fires were in Northeast, and then we try to look at causes and correlations, if there are any, and then we hit the streets, literally knocking on doors with public education to try to prevent these avoidable incidents from occurring in the future. We use our community risk assessment tool to accomplish that. The link to our community risk assessment tool that's available to anyone to look at is actually on our Facebook page that we just posted last night. So if you're interested in learning more about your community risk assessment, please visit our website or our Facebook page rather, and you can look at the community risk assessment tool there, either our Facebook page or the city's website on the fire department tab. But we just don't put up the data and statistics and give you the numbers. We actually go back and peel the layers of the onion back to figure out why these incidents are occurring. We knock on doors once we get that answer and provide blocks at a time, specific public education material so we can try to prevent those avoidable incidents from occurring in the future. And Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Chief. So I will open it up to the floor. Any council members have any questions? And if I can't see you, please just speak up. Anyone? Going once?
I have a question.
Twice? Okay, here we go. Majority Leader.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Chief, thank you for your presentation. You mentioned that, I believe it was December, you had a very difficult month. What ways are you looking to implement, if you have not done already, to change that so that you won't experience a consecutive trend on bad performance, if you want to call it that?
For EMS response?
Yes.
Great question, sir. So we have, obviously, we're an all hazards emergency response organization here at Hartford Fire Department. For EMS, we have never seen, or we've never had a month, if you will, that I would say was below 73% in compliance. This past month was 71%. And again, if we did not have COVID-19 into consideration, or if I did not have to mandate overtime, which means I had to tell 8 people on 3 different days that they had to work, they cannot go home, that number would be concerning. But we had those challenges. Our plan of action is to continue to work with our tour commanders to reiterate the importance of us getting out of the house in a timely manner. And in some instances, we have apparatus that are responding to a call to getting out of the house, but they're not telling dispatch. We have found that occurring also as we do an investigation or inquiry to find out why we had not so desirable response times in certain aspects with some of our apparatus. The firefighters getting out of the house, but they're just not communicating that to dispatch. However, in some instances, we just could have done better. So the plan, Mr. Councilman, is to continue to reiterate the importance, and then also make sure that the men and women are getting on the radio when they acknowledge the call, when they acknowledge they're en route, and then, of course, lastly, when they acknowledge that they're on scene to ensure that the data that we have is indeed accurate.
Anyone else has any questions? Okay. Well, Chief Freeman, I'd like to thank you again. As always, great job. The men and women in your department has always been doing, above and beyond, and I do appreciate that, as well as the rest of the council. Thank you for your presentation, and I am looking forward to joining you on that meeting with Mark. Mark and I, we go a long way back, and I think what he's doing right now is incredibly helpful, and a very different concept that I do believe is actually helping keep our citizens, some of our citizens, alive and hopefully into a better future.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
So you are excused. You don't have to hang around. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank you, ma'am. Hope everyone have a good night.
Thank you, Chief.
You too. Okay, our last item on the agenda is our Hartford Police Department with Chief Doty, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Councilman. Can everybody, am I sharing my screen?
Yes.
Yes, you are, Chief.
Yes.
Thank you. So I'm going to jump right into the presentation here. We're going to just quickly, we're going to kick off with a crime update that Assistant Chief Medina will give us. I'm going to go through just some of the officer-involved shooting updates that I can provide. We're going to get a little brief intro to Assistant Chief Kenny Howell, his first public safety meeting. And then I'm just going to go over some officer attrition issues that a little analysis that we've done halfway through the fiscal year, and something I think we're going to have to address. So without further ado, I'll kick it off to Assistant Chief Medina for the crime update.
Thank you, Chief Doty, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Happy New Year.
Good evening.
Happy New Year.
I can honestly say 2020 was a challenging year for the Hartford Police Department. Through the ups and downs, the civil unrest, COVID, I cannot go without saying that if it wasn't for the work of the men and women of the Hartford Police Department, we wouldn't be where we are today. The community relations that have been built, and the outreach, that saved this city from being on national news and across the country with all the other things that are going on. But with that being said, granted, we did see a 10.2% increase in heart-run crimes throughout the city. And the question is, what drove that up? Is it murders, which we had 25 compared to 23 last year? One murder's one too many. But we had 25. Robberies went up 4.2%. Our larcenies are 8.0%. Auto theft 22.9% and 19.4% in aggravated assaults. Now, when you break it down by district, looking at it and how each district is affected with crime, obviously every district is unique. Everyone has their different challenges. But when we talk about homicides in the city, the Southeast District saw a 36% increase. They accounted for 36% of our homicides throughout the city out of 25, which is 9. That was followed by Northeast with 8, Northwest with 5, and Southwest with 3. So looking at it, the eastern half of the city accounted for 17 or 68% of our homicides in 2020, which we have to take a look at. And like I stated before, robbery. We had 283 robberies in Hartford in 2020. Looking at that, once again, the Southeast accounted for 29% of robberies, which equates to 83 of the 283, followed by Northeast at 78, which is 28%, Southwest at 76, which is 27%, and Northwest at 16%. So we're looking at that and saying the eastern half of the city, what's contributing to crime there? And that's what we look at our zone lieutenants to say, these individual Part 1 crimes are unique to your districts, and how we're going to solve that, how we're going to come to a resolution. Going to our bigger Part 1 crime, which affects the city as a whole, is larceny. We had 2,790 larcenies in 2020 throughout the city of Hartford. Southwest at 845, Southeast at 780, Northwest at 631, and Northeast at 533. Southwest, Southeast, and southern portion of the city accounted for 58% of our Part 1 crimes, which our zone lieutenants have been coming up with a strategy to combat that. And some of that has to do with shoplifting, especially in the southwest portion of the city, which we have been identifying. Aggravated assaults. Looking at that, we had 886 throughout the year. The Northeast, once again, at 26%, followed by the Southwest, which we are trying to combat as well. Now, touching on one of our biggest issues in the city is auto theft. Now, we know auto theft impacts the city as a whole. Now, there were 666 stolen motor vehicles taken from the city of Hartford in 2020. We recovered 289 in the city. The rest are either outstanding or been recovered out of town. But our biggest issue here is motor vehicles stolen from outside the city and recovered in the city. Last year, the city of Hartford had recovered 1,175 motor vehicles that were stolen from outside city limits and recovered inside town limits. That's a huge number that we are working with the surrounding towns to combat that problem. You know, Chief Doty and I and our auto theft unit and our task force have been talking with surrounding police chiefs, surrounding towns to say, look, what do we need to do to prevent you having an auto theft problem in your town and us recovering them? You know, leaving key fobs in the vehicle, leaving cars unlocked, leaving items in plain view that you have to smash and grabs with our larcenies. So we've been working to combat that as a whole. So come 2021, you know, our goals and objective for me and for us is identify unique issues within each district. Northwest, larcenies. Our biggest issue, Silent Hill, larcenies. Thefts from motor vehicles, theft of motor vehicle parts, which we have to tackle. You know, we look at the Northeast, we look at auto theft, and we looked at aggravated assaults. How do we combat that? Southeast, ironically, out of all the Part 1 crimes, they're in the negative, except for homicides. And why is that? And let's identify that and let's tackle that issue. And followed by the Southwest, which once again is our burglaries and our aggravated assaults. So each district lieutenant has been tasked with, you know, here are issues unique to each district, and how are you going to tackle that? What are we going to do? How are we going to involve the community? How are we going to involve our CSOs, our patrol, our specialized units to combat those problems? So as a city as a whole, we have unique issues in each district, but together we should be able to go ahead and combat those. So 2021, we're identifying them, we're coming up with a game plan, and we're going to attack those. And in the meantime, hopefully we can reduce gun violence as well. So now, if you look at our 3-year comparison, though, however, the stats I gave you, even though we're up 10.2% from last year over a 3-year period, we're down 20%. So I don't want to make it seem like that it's all doom and gloom, because it's not. I mean, if you look at the past 3-year history, we are down significantly across all districts. Northwest, we're up 14.9% this year. However, over a 3-year period, we're down 10.3. Northeast, we're up 14.3, but we're down 12.2% over a 3-year period. Southwest, we're up 14.6, but we're down significantly, 31.7% over a 3-year period. And for the Southeast, Southeast, we're down 0.4%, and we're down 17.8% over a 3-year period. So our numbers, even though I gave you upfront the high end, over the 3-year period, we are down across the city 20%. And that's that I attribute that to the great work of the men and women of the Hartford Police Department. But I want to build upon that. I want to keep building upon that, and let's keep bringing it down, across the city. And that's why I want to attack these unique situations or issues with each district coming 2021. Chief Doty?
Rob, you want to go through the previous week, previous 28 days, just to kind of show us where we're trending in the more recent past, the month over month, and then we've got one more slide for you on firearms.
Okay. Now looking at the first week of 2021, which is, it's very significant. If you look at it compared to previous years, the first week of 2021, we're down 36.6%. That just shows you right from the beginning that the Hartford Police Department is working to start bringing that and reach our goals. We're bringing it down, 36.6 compared to, this week. And then we're down 38.5% compared to last year at this time. So we're almost down 40% from this year to last year going in to a year, which is fantastic. You see that on your screen right there, 36.6, the 28-day period of 29%. We're going in the right direction. And we're going to keep putting our initiatives out there to keep going in that direction of bringing crime down throughout the city. So that's where we're with that. Chief?
Yep, just some of our recent gun arrests, recent gun seizures. The officers continue to do great work in going out there and trying to get some of these guns off the street. We've seen some particularly dangerous guns this year. If you look at the lower right-hand corner, you'll see a Glock handgun with a large magazine, drum magazine, that was recovered with 79 rounds in the magazine. And that would be before you have to reload. And then again, all that narcotics and a bulletproof vest that was taken from that property. A lot of that's fentanyl. We know how dangerous that is, as we just heard Chief Freeman go through the Narcan stats. That was a federal, a joint federal search warrant that recovered all of that you see in that lower right-hand picture. That was a direct connection with New York to Hartford. That's just a good example of our collaboration with our federal partners and what it tends to yield for us. I'll go in just quickly to an overview. I think everybody on the call here is on the email updates. I'm trying to get out as much, as many updates as I can on the officer involved shootings, the two of them that occurred in the end of December and then the beginning of January. Saturday, December 26th was our officers were called to the area of 25 Gilman Street on a report of a male with a firearm in the street. Upon arrival, they met with the complainant's brother, who had been having talks with the individual to try to calm him down. The armed individual left that area. He was identified as 30-year-old Shamar Ogman. 911 caller who was his baby's mother and the sister of the baby's mother, both were on the phone, characterized him as acting very deranged and that he was in possession of firearms. He was located by responding officers, and according to about 9 minutes of body-worn camera video that we have, he had a handgun and a rifle in his hand. Officers attempted to get him to drop the guns several times while they were basically following him through the neighborhood. He was in the backyards, front yards, in the street, brandishing these firearms and pointing them in the direction of the officers. Despite the requests to drop his weapons, at one point he was behind a dumpster and points his rifle in the directions of the officers. You can hear multiple officers say that he's pointing it at them, and then one shot was discharged by Officer Ashley Martinez. Aid was immediately given to Mr. Augman, but he passed away at the hospital. This investigation is being conducted by the Milford and Sonia State's attorney, Margaret Kelly, and the actual scene was processed, and the investigation is actually being physically conducted by the State Police Eastern District Major Crime Squad. I put out the body-worn camera from multiple, the state's attorney put out some of the body-worn camera. That's not all of it. There is quite a bit of body-worn camera and some private camera as well, and also the 911 call. All that stuff was turned over to the state's attorney. This is, one of those cases where they then take the investigation. So, getting updates from them, I will continue to try to get updates from them as the case progresses. But these investigations do fall under their purview. Officer Martinez was placed on administrative leave, which is per our policy. She's back to work on an administrative function pending the outcome of the Firearms Discharge Review Board. So she's back working and basically on what would be described as desk duty, pending the outcome of the investigation and pending on a vote from the Firearms Discharge Review Board to put her back to work or clear her or not clear her, depending on where the facts go. That preliminary report I sent to everybody by email. It was released on December 29th, Tuesday. That's all we know on that one so far. And then the Enfield Street shooting.
Excuse me, Chief.
Sure.
I'd like to interrupt you at this moment. I do have a couple of questions for you on this. Two of them. One was Officer Martinez referred to the Employee Assistance Program, because I, as many officers as I know, they don't go out there with the intention to shoot, especially to kill anyone. So, that takes a toll on a person, I'm sure. So my question is, how is she doing? Has she been referred to EAP? And also my second question is, have we reached out to the family to see how they're doing as well?
So the first question for EAP, yes, she was referred to EAP as well as other officers that were on the scene. You can go on our website. We have 2 documents on there, a policy for EAP referrals and for mental health, and a department directive that comes from a public act regarding mental wellness and mental health and traumatic incidents for law enforcement. Those are the policies that we have. They're up on the website. They can be reviewed. But we follow those policies anytime, not only there's an officer involved shooting, but anytime an officer sees something traumatic like a fatal accident or anything that could impact them, we make sure that we refer them. How much they take advantage of those programs is an individual choice, and that's confidential between them and the providers, but we do make reference to them as well. As far as the family goes, the state's attorney's office is the one that, and the Connecticut State Police came in. They are the ones that have been interacting with the family. We did make our police department available to them to do any meetings that they do. But I don't know specifically anything about how the family's doing. The state's attorney's office reaches out to them. What we try to make sure in anything like this is that we stay, we are the police department that was involved in the shooting, and we do not want to make it look like we're being involved in the investigation in any way or interfering with the investigation in any way. So it's, in the interest of independence and transparency, we try to stay away from that. I mean, obviously, family members in this particular case were involved in the 911 call, so we don't typically reach out until the investigation's over.
And do you know if the health department reached out to the family via the police department?
I don't.
No. Okay. Thank you. I just want to open up the floor at this moment to any of my colleagues on this incident. Any questions from anyone? Okay, Chief, you have the floor. Thank you.
Okay, so the second one, officer involved shooting on January 6th, about 9:17 in the morning. Members of our FBI Northern Connecticut Gang Task Force and Connecticut Violent Crimes Task Force were operating in the area of Enfield Street looking for an individual, Brandon Spence, who was involved in a shooting on December 7th, right in that area, right at the corner of Enfield and Greenfield. His supervised release from a federal arrest was revoked as a result of the shooting that he was involved in December. And we had members of the task force out there looking for him to take him into custody. He's been involved in quite a few of our shootings and shooting activities. So they were out there looking for him, found him, went to arrest him. And while they did that, a second individual, later identified as 34-year-old Benicio Vasquez, was ended up ramming the FBI car with his car, with a Jeep. And then that car was boxed in. He jumped out of that car, ran up the driveway at 98 Enfield Street, and ended up exchanging gunfire with a federal officer, an FBI agent, and a New Britain officer assigned to the task force. I'll explain that in a little bit more depth in a second. Mr. Vasquez sustained gunshot wounds that resulted in fatal injuries, and he passed away at the hospital. The investigation into this incident is being conducted by State's Attorney Griffin from New Haven with the assistance of the Western District Major Crimes. Previous one is Eastern District. And this investigation is also being conducted in conjunction with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI. So when I talked earlier about that drug bust and our federal task forces, what happens is that we offer assistance in these federal task forces, whether they're the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Drug Enforcement Agency, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. What happens is they create a task force that has a specific purpose, in this case, basically a violent crime task force. And their intent is to work with the federal partners and local agencies to develop information and to conduct cases in and around. In this case, this is the Hartford Task Force, so in and around Hartford. So each of the officers that are assigned to this task force are deputized as what they call TFOs, or task force officers. So that New Britain police officer was deputized as a task force officer in the FBI, which means that he has jurisdiction in the towns and around the state where the FBI covers. So he was in Hartford as a deputized federal task force officer. That I did get that question a couple times. What's a New Britain officer doing in Hartford? Our Hartford officers that are assigned to those task force operate, outside of the city and sometimes outside of the state, depending on the case. Like I said, that previous case was a New York case that we worked with New York on. So that is how the jurisdiction works. In this particular case, as I kind of move on here, none of our officers fired their weapons. No Hartford officer fired their weapons. All of our evidence was turned over to investigators, in this case, both the FBI and the state entities. And a very basic preliminary report came out from State's Attorney Griffin on Friday, January 8th. State's Attorney Griffin, is the New Haven State's Attorney and is fully aware of transparency. And he had offered to do a Zoom meeting, and he is still available for that. I didn't get a tremendous response as I put that out by email. I've only gotten 2 responses so far. So I am going to schedule that meeting for next week. With this week, we have the inauguration tomorrow. We had the events on Sunday. So things got a little bit busy, but I'm going to schedule that meeting for next week, and I'll put it out again in the email to see if anybody wants to attend the briefing by State's Attorney Griffin, so that we can still do it. But I didn't get too many responses, really. Is what I'm saying.
Chief, I have a couple of questions again. As far as being deputized, is it safe to say that although they're sworn in as an officer for the city of Hartford or officer for New Britain, does this also means there's again getting sworn in, and at what capacity are they working at once they're in this task force?
Yeah, so these actually require us to send, a letter. There's an MOU between us and the feds. There's also an MOU between us and the state. We have officers assigned to statewide task forces as well, the auto theft task force, the statewide narcotics task force. It's the same thing. So there's actually a background. They look into the background of the officer, make sure that they're suitable, and then they are actually given credentials as a member, as a deputized member of that agency. So we have officers, and I may miss a few, but we have officers assigned to the Connecticut State Police, the statewide auto theft task force, statewide narcotics task force. We have officers assigned to the U.S. Marshal's Office, going after dangerous fugitives. We have officers assigned to the FBI, and we have officers assigned to the DEA, and those span from a violent crime task force like this all the way through to cybercrime task force and things like that. And all that allows us to do is share information and resources between local, state, and federal governments and over the lines. As we know, Chief Medina spoke about it earlier. I've spoken about it before. You look at the auto theft issue, that spans from Manchester through East Hartford, through Hartford, and into New Britain and West Hartford, along that 84 corridor, having officers from different departments that have intelligence on different specific criminals within the area that perpetrate a lot of these crimes helps us to keep those crime problems under control. It's basically a way to share information and share jurisdiction.
All right, thank you, Chief.
All right, so I think I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Chief Kenny Howell so he can introduce himself. And then
I'm sorry. Before you turn it over to AC Howell, I just had a question about that, and I'm sorry, I do have a question regarding the other officer-involved shooting. With the incident on Enfield Street, and I guess this would pertain to us as well. How often is a local police officer recruited to participate in some of these federal task force? Is it something that you have to apply to? How are they selected? Could you just provide us with a little bit more information regarding that?
It kind of depends. So we have an opening in the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency task force right now, and it's posted in the department. Just like it would be any other assignment. If I had an opening in special investigations or in backgrounds, we would post it. People that are interested would apply for it. There's a panel that would include likely the captain of the bureau, Assistant Chief Medina on the operations side, and whatever commander of the division would be. In the DEA's case, we would have the special agent in charge of the DEA, Pete Borsavich, will be in here. And they would do interviews, and then they would make a selection. In the case of a task force officer, they usually are required to be detectives because it's detective work. So if I were to take an officer and put him in that position, they'd be working out of class. I would be able to assign an officer to a task force for up to 1 year, and then I would either have to promote him to detective or I'd have to take him out. That has happened under specific circumstances. Sometimes officers may they may speak a language that's particularly useful in a certain investigation. We may take officers and assign them for things like that. If they're up on a wire, if they're doing listening to phone calls and they need somebody that speaks a certain language, we may do that. But typically it's detectives and it's posted just like any other assignment would be posted. It's competitive. Anybody that's interested in that job can put in for it. And then they'll make a selection, and then ultimately I would approve.
Thank you for that the explanation. Is this extra pay? How are officers compensated?
Not extra pay, but many of these MOU, these memorandum of understandings, come with a certain amount of overtime. This is also how we get to asset forfeiture money. So by allowing our officers to partake in these federal task forces, we get a certain amount, especially with the DEA, we get, when the case is adjudicated, a certain amount of that money comes back to the PD to use in violent crime and narcotics investigations, depending on what the task force is. But they make the same amount of money. Often in a task force, they're assigned a task force vehicle. So they'll have a specialized vehicle that might be considered a perk, but it is, most of these state police and federal task forces will assign a vehicle, so we don't have to use our cars. And they may be entitled to a certain amount of overtime that agency will pay for. There's usually an agreement, so many dollars a month that officer can use or detective can use in overtime, but they don't get paid at a different rate.
Thank you for that. Also, too, regarding the first officer involved shooting, what's in an incident like that when you have a reported person roaming the streets with a assault rifle or any other type of handgun like that? What's the role in a negotiator being called out to try to diffuse the situation? And as well as, and how is the Hartford Crisis Response Team, the new, I think that's the name of it, the new task force that was created by the mayor, how are they intricately involved in all of this as we move forward?
So we had a town hall meeting on that on Saturday. The short answer that I got from the clinicians in that call is that they would not be they wouldn't have been involved in this situation. There may be opportunities for a social worker to be involved with Mr. Ogman prior to this. There was a history there of mental illness that was reported by the family. The family tried to get him help. He did have 2 interactions with local police departments before this, prior to this. One was the Meriden Police Department and one was the Bloomfield Police Department. So I think there may be an opportunity to insert some kind of social worker or mental health care provider, prior to this incident. But once you have somebody on the streets with a rifle, the number one response by police is to contain and make the scene safe. So these officers were doing just that over the course of 8 or 9 minutes. They were trying to contain this individual to a place where he couldn't hurt anyone else. As more body-worn camera is released, which I hope happens, you'll hear them trying to evacuate houses, as you can imagine, with that kind of a police response and someone jumping fences and activating motion lights. Windows started to open, doors started to open, citizens started to come out. You've got an enhanced danger to the neighbors, to the people in the neighborhood. There's not an opportunity there, in my opinion, and in the opinion of the clinicians. Capital Region, Sue, who's on the committee, I'm on the committee as well, for the new social worker team. But they were pretty adamant that there would not be an opportunity at that point for some sort of intervention in that way. Now, as far as a police negotiator goes, the police negotiation team is not huge. There's about, I think, 6 members or so on it. We would have to call them in. So if we got to a point where we could contain Mr. Ogman that night, and he wasn't an immediate danger to the officers or anyone in the vicinity, if we were able to evacuate that apartment complex, then we certainly would have called negotiators in. That's exactly what we do to try to negotiate our way out of that without having to use our firearms. Now, that being said, we also have CIT trained officers. We've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 or 50 CIT trained officers that's crisis intervention training that could come out there and help out as well. In this particular case, that's kind of what, the officer's trying to talk him down, saying, listen, it doesn't have to end badly, just drop your gun. That's the kind of engagement and de-escalation engagement that the officers are trained to do. Unfortunately, though, once Mr. Ogman pointed the rifle at the officers and they were in immediate threat, that is when it is believed that, that they fired based on the video and based on what we heard. The investigation will will tell us the whole story. But I did not see, and again, we'll find out when the whole story comes out, but there was not a real opportunity there for intervention by a social worker or a mental health professional. That situation was far too volatile and far too dangerous. Would have been nice if some of those processes were in place prior to him having the episode that he had on December 26th. It sounds like, he was certainly his family certainly tried to talk him into getting some help. I believe one of the articles I read said that his mom had reached out to him to try to do that, and that he hung up on her and tragically never spoke to her again. So I do think that there may be opportunities before someone is running around a neighborhood with a firearm. But in that moment, it'd be very difficult to safely get someone in place to be able to do that work.
Does anyone else have a question for Chief?
I don't.
Okay. You do? No?
No.
Okay, go ahead, Chief.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and let AC Howell introduce himself, and I think for the sake of time, I will save this attrition report for next time. So Chief Howell, you're going to close it out. No pressure.
Thank you, Chief. So I just want to introduce myself. My name is Kenny Howell. I'm the new Assistant Chief for Administration and Professional Standards. That will encompass a lot of different units, but one of the marching orders the Chief gave me was to make sure that the department gets up to accreditation, to review policies and procedures to make sure they're tight. And it will also encompass Police Academy and Internal Affairs and, like I said, many other units. But I do want to publicly thank Chief Doty for having the confidence in allowing me to be on his team. Chief, thank you very much for that. So far, working with Chief Medina and Chief Doty and the rest of the team up here, I'm very pleased. So I'm very honored and privileged. Briefly, 21 years of service in New Haven, Connecticut. Went up the ranks. Then I became a chief for 3 years in Massachusetts with the primary agenda of completing a management study report, which had about 182 recommendations, and my team and I completed that report. We completed all feasible, everything that was feasible, and we did it all within the budgetary constraints. So that was a great privilege to work on that with my team. So now I'm here. I'm very pleased to be here with on this team in Hartford. I look forward to meeting all of you and working with you all to make Hartford a even better city. I'm a very big on community policing. If you've read my story, you'll know that I've lived in the city, grew up in New Haven, and I had both sides, the good side of policing and some bad encounters, which led me to become a police officer. And again, I'm just honored to be here, and I look forward to working with you all. If you have any questions, I'll entertain them. Everyone just want to
Anyone has any questions? Councilwoman Rossetti?
Through you, those chairs. Welcome, Assistant Chief Howell.
Thank you.
Can you briefly tell me what your definition of community policing is?
Oh, my definition? Well, yeah. So for me, it's creating relationships and partnerships. But a lot of people will say that, but I mean meaningful relationships and meaningful partnerships, long lasting, I think. Community policing is simple to me. Community policing is developing these relationships that any small town would have with their police departments. Even though we're a large city, I think that it's important for us to know our officers, to know their names. I think it's important for the officers to know their community and know the names of the residents in their districts. I'm a big proponent of that. I used to do something in New Haven where I would walk up to officers and ask them, give me 3 names of your residents. Tell me about them, tell me their stories. And if they didn't, they weren't doing community policing under my command. So that's it in a nutshell. It's you and I talking to each other, if you have a problem, you give me a call and we take care of it and we solve problems together.
Thank you, Assistant Chief. I just want to leave you with this story. First of all, I know the name, since retired, Ann Cody, of my first community service officer when I bought this house 20-something years ago. But I often tell the story about being in front of my house and some officers drove by and I waved just because I thought it was a good thing to do. And they stopped and said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "Well, thank you, but I really just want to be able to, reach out to the community." So I'd like to see that happen more. I'd like to see true, meaningful relationships because everything starts with a relationship. You have better conversations when you start with a relationship. And I look forward to seeing what lies ahead for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Majority Leader Clark.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. AC Howell, thank you again for your willingness to serve the Hartford Police Department and the City of Hartford's residents. Just briefly, could you just provide some detail as to, since now we have 2 assistant chiefs, so our chiefs complex is basically in order. Just explain in detail the role you'll be playing and the departments that you are overseeing versus the departments that AC Medina would be overseeing too, so that we can just have some clarity as to who's under you and who's under AC Medina.
Okay, so the simpler way is to tell you what AC Medina is in charge of. All of patrol and all of Detective Bureau. And I'm everything else. So that will include internal investigations, that would include the police academy, policies and procedures, records division, property room, accreditation, I think I mentioned that. So that's the way I like to look at it. That's the best way that Chief Medina is in charge of patrol operations and the Detective Bureau, and I'm everything else.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarity. I'm sorry.
Was that helpful?
Yes, it was helpful, and I hope the rest of my esteemed colleagues and the public feels that it was helpful as well. Again, thank you for you serving our city and our men and women in the police department, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Anyone else has a question? Council President Molly Rosado. You're on mute.
Thank you for that. So more of a thank you, Chief Doty and AC Medina, for the presentation you just gave. I want to welcome publicly AC Howell to the command staff. I really look forward to working with HPD as council president. I encourage all my colleagues to do the same. And like Councilwoman Rossetti said, right, everything starts with communication and relationships. I'm very excited that we started the year off with, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe Chief Doty is on our screen anymore, that we do have AC Medina, a complete command staff now. Am I correct in saying that?
You are correct, dear Madam President.
Okay. So that will be able to alleviate our chief and do more of the chief work that he was hired to do. So with that, I just want to say congratulate you all for the amazing job that you're doing. And I have total confidence that we're going to move forward in the right direction. So be safe and thank you again.
Thank you.
Councilman Gale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to add to the chorus of welcomes to our new Assistant Chief Howell. Glad to have you on board. And just to follow up on Councilwoman Rossetti's very poignant comments, I'm a guy who walks around Hartford quite a bit. And so I look forward to having you and Chief Medina and every other Hartford officer wave at me when I wave at you as we pass each other on the streets. So look forward to seeing you out there.
Okay, so I'll be the last one to speak unless Councilwoman Surgeon wants to say something. Okay. All right, Assistant Chief Howell, welcome aboard. It was a pleasure meeting you approximately a little over a month ago, right? I'm looking forward to working with you, and I'm sure the rest of the council is looking forward to working with you. One of my pet peeves is communication, and I think that's for all of us. We like to make sure that we're kept updated, that we're not caught off guard, and that we know what's going on, hence the transparency. And I do have one ask for you. I'm not sure if you're aware, 1969, the Cintron versus Vaughn case. If you can look that up and study it and give us your opinion and how we're going to move this department forward with everyone else. Thank you so much. And with no other questions, is there any other question? Okay, Councilman Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do look forward to the command staff coming up with a timeline, as we had discussed, regarding the police climate study that was that actually was provided to us, the 74-page document. So we look forward to that.
Yeah, I can comment
Thank you
on
for
that.
that, Councilman.
Chief Doty delegated assignments, recommendations to individual command staff members of the agency. Due date was January 31st. A lot of those recommendations have been submitted to Chief Doty, and you'll be getting that shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant Chief Medina. So are we all set? Okay, we have a public hearing at 7 p.m. within the next 6 minutes. So everyone have a great evening. Thank you for attending. I'd like to thank my audience. Have a good night.
Take care, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.